Good afternoon. This is always one of the most exciting days of the year when we get an opportunity to introduce 26 new people officially into our program. Some of them have already been enrolled, but today we get to talk about them a little bit. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking Tark Ahmad, our Director of Recruiting, Kevin Caldwell, our Assistant Director, Drew Robinson, and really all of the recruiting staff who do such a great job throughout the year, because there really are no days off in recruiting. Now we cycle on until the next recruiting class. But today's the day to talk about this group, 26 players, 11 on offense, 14 on defense, a critical player in the special teams. As a long snapper we have as well, 8 players from the state of New Jersey, 7 players from Florida, 2 from Pennsylvania, 3 from New York, and 6 players from non-traditional areas. So with that, I would open it up for questions.
Kyle, in general terms, there's been a lot of already outside criticism about the class and the decommits. How do you address that?
I don't know that I would address it at all, but I would say this. The last 14 months have created a lot of challenges for us here at our university, and we've come through those now. And these 26 players that are committed to play in our program believe in our program and believe in this university. And now we get to go forward as a family and turn the page for the first time, looking towards the 2014 season, our inaugural season in the Big Ten, and really move on to the next chapter of Rutgers football. So we've got some new coaches already in place. We've got 26 new players now in place. For me, everything is about looking forward.
Rick, could you talk about, you mentioned the non-traditional recruiting areas. You have 5 of these players are from Big Ten countries, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Minnesota, and how you were able to balance that with keeping this almost like any other Vexiano class, the emphasis on New Jersey and Florida?
I think recruiting always begins with the state of Rutgers, and the state of Rutgers always begins in New Jersey. And there's some really fine football players. The defensive player of the year in our state, Sidney Gopri from Weequahic High School, is a tremendous playmaker on defense. We've got some defensive linemen, from the state of New Jersey that have joined this class. Eric Waif was already enrolled from Egg Harbor Township. Kevin Wilkins, the #1 heavyweight wrestler in our state, is going to be an excellent defensive tackle. Donald Bedell from Rumson Fairhaven, and Jimmy Hogan from Ramapo, defensive end bodies. I think somebody earlier in the day asked me what was one of the goals of this class, and I think in college, when you're recruiting a class that's this big, it's going to have a little bit of everything, but certainly we were not naive to the fact that we felt we needed linemen. We needed to build depth up front on both sides of the ball, and the opportunity to sign 6 defensive linemen and 4 offensive linemen, I feel like we've done that, and quite a few of them from New Jersey. And Florida's always been a good area for us. There's no doubt. A guy like Josh Hicks, as a running back from Palmetto High School, I would put his film against anybody's in the country. And I think he's an elite level player and somebody that can have an immediate impact on our program. But your question was a little bit more about the non-traditional areas and supplementing. And I think that has probably the biggest impact that the Big Ten has had on us in recruiting. I think it's given us access to other areas and given us openings where there's going to be some players every year from our non-traditional areas that want to be a part of a great university like Rutgers and want to be a part of a great conference like the Big Ten and have an opportunity to play for Big Ten championships.
Coach, when a kid does give you a verbal commitment, what does that mean to you? I don't think there's any gray area in the definition of the word commitment. I think what has happened in college athletics right now is, in recruiting, we have a flawed system. And there's some really good people like Mack Brown who are leading the charge to try to rectify that situation. But when you live in a world where you hear words like soft commitment, I don't really know what that means. Or, on the other side of it, words like committable offer. I don't really know what that means. And I think we've put these young people in a very difficult position. And I think at times we put the coaches in a difficult position. So when you ask me what the word commitment means commitment. It means that I'm committed to you and you're committed to me. When players commit and then they decide to look at other places, I think what happens is it forces the schools to look at other places. And
I think the story's been kind of relayed incorrectly, and I haven't really spoke on it, but, people said, did you pull a scholarship offer? I didn't pull any scholarship offers. When a player commits to us, we take a scholarship and we put it aside. When that player decides to visit other places, well, then we have to look at other players. So at that point, it's back in play.
So it's fair to you to say, hey, listen, if you're going to go look elsewhere, we got to look elsewhere too. That's a conversation that you'll have with a recruit.
Absolutely, and I don't know how it could work any other way. And as I've told many a recruit, when you get someday when you get engaged to who may be your future wife, if you give her a ring and you say that, hey, listen, I would love to marry you in a year, but don't worry, I'm just going to date a few other girls along the way. I'm not so sure that would go over so
That's
well.
not okay?
Well, again, it wasn't how I went about it, but if you want to try it, feel free.
Just last question. When you're dealing with the kids, do they lean on this excuse? Do you think that, this is a huge decision, obviously, for a kid. It can make or break their life on and off the field. So is that always sort of the fallback? Well, look, I just want to be sure. I just want to be sure. Is that part of? Is there ever a way to fix something like that? The uncertainty in a decision like this.
I think there's a lot of conversations that happen, and I've heard a lot of things over the years. And what I've said to every player before they've committed is, I said, hey, unless you are sure, don't commit. Somebody like Josh Hicks has been committed to us for 2 years. 2 years. But he was committed. He felt like this was the right place for him, and he never wavered. Somebody like Batim Bujari, already in our program, was very similar. A very early commitment. And we've had other players in our program that committed really towards the end of the recruiting process, guys like Darius Hamilton and Savon Huggins, who did take multiple visits. So I think the only way to get it right is to ultimately really be sure. But from a functional standpoint, this is my own personal belief, that really the only way that you would kind of clean it up a little bit would be to have an early signing period the way basketball does. But we don't have that right now.
Kyle, you lean fairly heavily, I guess, on true freshmen last year. Can you tell yet how many from this class might be able to contribute immediately? Not necessarily looking for specific names, but in general numbers?
It'd be tough for me to give numbers, but I would say this. The 6 players who have enrolled early, 5 of them will be eligible to play next year. And I would say that they would have an advantage. And I think they're one of the strengths of this recruiting class as well, to have 5 players that have enrolled in early, a guy like Marcus Applefield on the offensive line, an area where we absolutely need to build depth, a guy like Eric Waif on the defensive line, a guy like Cam Lott in the secondary. They're going to have the opportunity, I think, to help us right away. Certainly Alan Lucy, our long snapper from the state of Virginia. We have scholarshiped him in anticipation of him coming here and helping us early. Now he's going to have to earn that job.
Kyle, when you look at the receiver position, what are your thoughts on not bringing one in, or could some of these athletes that you have signed end up at receiver?
I think they could. And the other thing I guess I would add to that is T.J. Johnson is going to play wide receiver this spring. So we've moved him to offense. I think that'll add another athlete for us over there, another long body who can run and catch. And I think a guy like Dre Boggs is somebody certainly who can play on both sides of the ball. And when you watch his highlight film, it's pretty spectacular.
You were talking about kind of the many problems involved with the whole recruiting process in terms of commencement and all that stuff. Aside from an earlier signing day period, is there any benefit to maybe not taking commits as early if you know that players haven't had a chance to go on official visits yet, or if they haven't had a chance to see anything other than your school? I mean, in-state players usually don't have that opportunity until during their senior season. I mean, it creates a perception problem if they decommit, and also it seems like they don't have the full opportunity to see things for themselves either.
I think that you said the problem. I don't see, when you ask me the question about the recruiting process, I can tell you what the issues are. I don't necessarily see them as problems. That's really what the process is right now. It is what it is until the rules change. We go through a lot of checkpoints before we take a commitment from a player. And when a player says that they want to commit, I take them at their word, unless they give me a reason not to. And if they gave me a reason not to, I probably wouldn't take their commitment at that point. But I don't know if there's a correct answer to that. I do know, and I'm not saying that I know that an early signing period is the answer to it. I just know that it would clean it up.
Kyle, you've said before that the STAR system for rating is imperfect. What does this class or members of this class have that the STAR system doesn't necessarily measure?
Well, someone would have to tell me how the STAR system measures for me to answer that question. I don't know that. What I do know is this. the way the star system has portrayed the past hasn't really come to fruition. I think we have 10 two-star players that are currently in the NFL. So I think ultimately recruiting is about relationships. Recruiting is about finding the right players and the right people, the right players for your system, the right people for your culture, for your university. And when all those things fit right, then that player is going to get better throughout his career. And I think that's what recruiting is. You are doing the best job you can as a recruiter to say, okay, here's where this player is right now when he's in high school. How much better is he going to get in our system? Because how much better he gets in our system might not be the same as how much better he gets in another system. And so when you ask me that question about this class, what I would say is that with this class, with this group of 26 players, I'm really excited about how much better I think they can get in our system, and really excited about how good they are right now on film.
Going back to the recruiting in the Big Ten region, I know one of the reasons Rutgers went to Florida was there was such a depth of talent there that the schools in those states just couldn't take it. Right? There were guys there for the taking, and proved that with the results from some of those players. Is there that depth of talent in those areas now that Rutgers can go get one kid from that state, one kid from this state, one kid from another state?
I think there is, but I think recruiting starts at home. And our traditional recruiting area has to be our primary focus every year. Now, that traditional area includes Florida. It's not necessarily close by geography, but we have such a significant amount of players on our team from Florida. They feel very much at home when they come here. And the other thing I would say to you from recruiting over the years is there are different parts of the country tend to travel more than others. There are certain parts of the country where the high school talent might be rich. They don't generally migrate north in terms of coming to school. There's always an exception, but in general they don't. And you got to find the areas not only where there's talent, but where that talent is going to be willing to travel.
Kyle, what are your thoughts on adding 2 quarterbacks technically in this class? And what do you see from Philip Nelson? What do you see from Gio Rosinho?
I think it's 2 completely different situations. I think with Gio coming in as a freshman, we're really excited about his athleticism, about his leadership characteristics. He's a tall, long, athletic body, throws the ball well, and really can run very well also. With Philip, he's a little bit more of a known commodity because he's been starting in the Big Ten for 2 years at Minnesota. Now he's not eligible this year, so he's going to have to learn the offense, learn the system, learn about our culture as a football team, learn how we do things. And I think as he does that over the next year, it'll be an advantage for him when he gets an opportunity to compete for the job.
Now, Kyle, when you see there's 8 kids from Jersey, what do you have to do to maybe differently or just fluke this year to get that number a little higher? I'm sure you want it.
I think every year is different, and I don't know what the number would be that I would want. Ultimately, I want the right players for our program. I want players that are excited about being here and representing Rutgers University. And there's some really talented football players in those 8 players. Some years it's been more. I don't know what the goal number would be, but I know this. I am really excited about these 8 players from New Jersey and the other players in this class that are excited about playing for Rutgers University.
And what impact do you think the new coaches will have going forward on recruiting?
I think they'll have an impact. I think they'll have an impact. And I think one of many things that are exciting as we turn the page towards next season is the university giving me the resources to go out and get the finest coaches in football and the finest minds. And I think when you have resources like that, it can lead to continuity. And when it leads to staff continuity, there's no doubt that helps you in recruiting.
You mentioned a bunch of challenges over the past 14 months have kind of developed. You guys had to overcome that. Combined with, I guess, the high-profile commitments that you had, coaching changes, how did that all come to affect this recruiting class?
You'd have to ask the recruits. I don't think of it like that. When we go forward in recruiting every day, we are out there trying to get the most talented players that fit our core values, that fit into our system and fit into our university. And then once we sign them, they're the only ones I think about, because it's only the players that you sign at your university do you get to develop. So the players that may have gone other places, that's not my concern anymore. My total focus goes to these players.
Kyle, it seems more than ever now there's a premium being placed on getting big, rangy defensive backs. How much of how much of that was appealing with a guy like Saquon Hampton, who's 6'1", 6'2"?
Sure, Saquon Hampton, Isaiah Wharton is another tall, long guy. Darian Daly's a long-arm guy. Certainly popular with what just happened in the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people have talked about that a lot out in Seattle, and I'm going to talk to Dan a little bit about that in the offseason because he was coordinating that defense. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think if you're going to play against big, tall, physical receivers, you better have physical corners. And are they all going to be over 6 foot? I don't know that. I don't think the average height for a corner in the NFL is over 6 foot. So I don't lead myself to believe that. But I think we have added some tall, long bodies. But what I've noticed since becoming the head coach and being more involved in special teams is this. Those tall, long bodies, guys like Brandon Jones, guys like Marcus Cooper, guys like Logan Ryan, they don't just help you at corner. They help you in special teams. And that's kind of the unwritten story of needing those type of bodies on your team.
Coach, from a defensive perspective, a lot of the players you've had in the program have fit in the league that you've played in Big East very well. This year was a little bit of a different look to the league, a lot of passing offenses you hadn't seen before. As you go into the Big Ten, how much, when you put together this class, do you look to the types of teams and the offenses that you'll face in that league?
I think from a personnel standpoint, we look inward first. Now, we know what our struggles were last year. We know where our inexperience was last year, and I feel that we're going to learn from that, and we'll be better because of it, even though it wasn't always enjoyable to go through it. But I think we look inward to our system because we feel like that our system of defense, when played at the highest level, can compete with anybody in the country, and I think it's proven that over time. So we're not gonna overreact to maybe our youth from last year. We're going to do a better job doing what we do. We have gotten bigger over the last couple of years because I think we've had access in recruiting to some bigger guys, but we have not sacrificed athleticism, and I think that is the key to everything. If you just go out with the mindset that you're going to get bigger, you can get bigger and get less athletic, and ultimately it's not going to be a positive.
I know you said yesterday you really weren't concerned with the length of the coaching searches. Do you feel like that affected recruiting? Because I know a lot of recruits were kind of saying that there was some uncertainty there.
You'd have to ask them. I don't think you could put a timetable on finding the right people. And I am really excited about the people that are in our program right now. I had a chance to talk to a couple people for the last position over the last 24 hours, and I feel like that will hopefully be resolved in the next couple days. And then we'll have our full staff together and we'll be able to go forward. Whether it did or it didn't would not have affected the pace of the search. That is all about finding the right people, and I think what the fans, what the university, what everybody will come to appreciate as we get closer to next season is that all these coaches were worth the wait.
Bit of a, I guess, a non sequitur, but why do college programs still use fax machines today?
I did get that question on another interview today, and why do colleges use fax machines today? I don't know. The players would tell you that I'm trying to eliminate paper from the program, even though I've got a couple pieces up here today. Maybe there's just something about being able to hold it in your hand. Maybe a scanned document on the computer just wouldn't feel the same.
I'm sorry, have you tried anything else? I mean, UCLA just went to electronic or whatever. Have you thought about anything else?
We have not. We have stayed with the fax machine.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, guys.
Old school.